Turin,
Hmm.
wind and weather. That's been a
Oh,
big thing of 3.9.
yeah.
And
So
it's got some cool things and some not so cool things. Why don't you lead us
it's
off on
got
that?
so another big rollout along with the food and drink mechanic has been the wind and weather. And so we're going to start off with weather first in the segment I call "Let It Snow." So, of course, with Microtech coming out, it's a cold environment. Some places are really cold. You got some extreme temperatures out there, but it's not always a blizzard. There's some pretty good and pretty, I think, visually appealing temperate environments on Microtech. But what you're going to encounter are snow, rain. You're already seeing that in other places too, that have atmospheric conditions where you're going to get rain. Microtech's a pretty good place. Pretty nice on the sunny days. Make sure you got at least medium armor to last for what is it, about 13 to 15 minutes on the outside with medium armor. Um, Clio is a very warm moon. It's got a methane lake. Don't go swimming in it, please. Don't do that.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
it's
it's
you
deadly.
with medium armor, you can pretty much go about 1 to 2 hours there. Calliope, I think, is the one that has the mountainous, the bunkers. That place is flipping cold, and you will freeze to death even in medium armor very quickly on the outside. I like the weather conditions. I think they're extreme at the moment because it is an alpha test, and they want to get as much impact as possible with these things. It comes very frequently. Everybody knows that weather systems don't necessarily roll in every 10 minutes, but some of the places where you're at, it'll get clear, and then suddenly 10 minutes later there'll be another thing that rolls in, it's just one right after another. So on the cold weather planets, it'll fluctuate. On the hot weather planets, and not really planets, they're really just moons. Aberdeen and Damar in particular, those places stay consistently hot. There is some fluctuation for nighttime and daytime that you'll see, but I know that Aberdeen is. I don't know how they do that prison there. If you ever escape, you better dang sure hope you got somebody to come pick you up, because that thing is can in the sunlight can be. I think it's what 226. I think I wrote it down. 100 and 226 Celsius. Yeah, 226 Celsius in the sunlight. You're going to just boil away very quickly. Even with the hot weather armor that you get, you only get 3 hours worth of time on that environment. Damar, it's about 106 Celsius. You can survive for another like 15, 20 minutes in medium armor, pretty much continuously in the hot weather piece. So the hot weather environments don't fluctuate. It's either hot or it just kind of drops at night, but still stays warm and goes back and forth. What you want is to make sure you pick up that gear. So there's two places to go get the gear. The hot weather suits at Tammany and Sons in Lorville, and the Novikov suit, which is the cold weather stuff, is up at Port Tressler. It's going to run you about 16K. I highly recommend that you pick it up, because if you want to operate in any length of time more than about 10 minutes in these environments, you're going to need to have that gear. So it's really going to change the way you load yourself out when you go do a mission. I think the water and food, even though we don't like to talk about it, we've already kind of beat that one to death, is going to make a difference in these cases as well, in those types of environments. So make sure that you get the right gear, and you know what environment you're going to go into before you step out.
So, Hendrosa, what do you think about the weather and the winds in
Oh,
particular?
we haven't talked about the winds yet. We'll talk about the winds
Oh,
in a
go ahead.
second.
Talk about winds then. Talk
Well, the
about
winds. You
winds,
want to talk about the
Turing.
winds now?
Yeah, talk about the
Whoa.
winds now.
Oh, okay. Well, the
Well, no,
winds.
hold on. You're right. Let's go to
I was going to
Hendrosa
do
and let
weather
him tell us
first.
what he
Yeah.
thinks about the weather.
All right, so I do like the weather aspect. It's one of the biggest things that I've really been harping on when I'm streaming and I'm talking to viewers and such. And it just makes it so much more realistic. I mean, right now they've hit the tip of the iceberg, literally. I can't wait until they get like thunderstorms in, the rain, the hail, anything like that. They can really, damage your ship, make it, fly differently, the whole 9 yards. I mean, we were talking as much as, something to where like if your ship is able to get struck by lightning, does it fluctuate your power? Does it turn it off? Have you descend a few thousand feet and then, you're able to start it back up and keep on going. I love that kind of stuff. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time, ground weather wise, out in the suits and things like that. So, Turin definitely has the upper hand there and the knowledge. But I mean, it looks like they've got you covered with the hot suits and the cold suits. But with the wind effects, I think that they really kind of need to get some of those under control a little bit because I've seen it affect folks in the hangar. So again, it's kind of like going back to what Jolly said. It's in alpha right now. They got to fix this stuff. But I think it's a great idea. Now, I have been doing a lot of mining out on Microtech, and I understand the lore of the gameplay. Terrafon and I were talking about it last night and everything, and why we're getting so many storms on there. So in some areas, I think it's a bit much, but I understand it's where they're trying to go with it, and we deal with it. I know we'll talk a little bit later about this stuff, but I think that they really need to implement ways of dealing with the weather, especially in like the 30th century, where they're at. I mean, come on, we've got stuff nowadays that we can have correct for weather. So
You mean walking at a snail's pace on top of a building at Microtech to deliver a box isn't fun?
yeah, that too.
While you're looking like a frozen popsicle.
Yeah, and your
Yeah.
face shield's freezing over.
Yeah.
And
I actually like that piece of it. I mean, the visuals and the mechanics they have built in as you slowly get more and more colder, that's pretty cool. I mean, you definitely feel it. Again, is it a distraction? I mean, okay, I'm cold. I mean, I got it. But I mean, I do like the way it looks, and it does give you a little bit more feel for what's actually going on. I think it's cranked up a little bit to like 11 or 12 right now because they're testing it.
I hope so.
I hope they dial it back. I think that's more of an indication of the wind problem. And I will say, we'll just move right on into the winds. The winds are a problem right now. I got it. It's testing, but it's a twister, man. I mean, whatever the winds are at, there's no little or just a light, gale force. It is a onslaught Cat 5 hurricane, most of the places you get. How many of us have spawned into Lorville and seen your ship up against the wall inside the hangar because there's a windstorm outside? How many of us have seen the video of the reclaimer that gets blown and tumbled across the landscape on Hurston because it's windy? Now, is that an indication of the winds or a mass problem with the ships? I don't know, but it really is a problem. I can remember the very first time we encountered it. A group of us came down onto a bunker, and we were in a Cutlass Red. And as soon as he turned the engines off, we were getting ready to jump off the back end of the ramp, and the thing just started to slide all the way across the landscape. And it's too much. It really is just too much.
constant tornado.
Yeah, wind shouldn't be affecting the ships that much.
Real quick on weather. Okay, cosmic background temperature is minus 235 degrees Celsius. You tell me why my spacesuit can't survive just fine on Microtech. That said, keep in mind, I think this actually adds the gameplay by requiring me to figure out what equipment I want to have for what situation. So, not realistic, but I like it. I think it's a big plus to have that temperature requirement in there for your gear. I like it a whole lot.
So, Nam, you've been fighting some of these winds while doing some prospect mining. Tell us what your experiences are.
Well, what I've experienced flying a prospect. Now, a prospector has never handled that well in atmosphere, which is by design. It's not supposed to. It's not aerodynamic. It's just not that kind of craft. But I was on the surface of Euterpe, and when a little windstorm would come through, you're fighting to turn certain directions. You'll be facing the wind and you're fine. The moment you try to swing left or right, you get about 90 degrees, give or take, either way, and it's like you're hitting a wall trying to turn the ship. You're trying to yaw left or right, and which might be good from a gameplay point of view. I have to think about that. You end up having to maneuver a certain direction to get to where you need to go because you can't just go straight there because of that.
Because you're in an airstream with a drill bit.
Pretty much.
I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's kind of cool, really, when you think about it. That it's forcing you to make those decisions. Don't forget, also, we got between that and visibility issues too, because sometimes it just goes white. You can't see a darn thing.
Yeah,
that's true. You know, the big gameplay. Sorry.
No, does the game actually have wind? What I'm saying is it wind or is it uncontrolled flight control inputs that the game is inducing on you? For the point you brought up there, if there's a wind direction it's coming from, I stick my nose into that direction, I'll fly a lot easier. I'll land a whole lot easier.
That's what happens.
That's
what happens.
If you get 90 degrees to the winds, you lose your flight control ability in a lot of cases.
All right, I want an ATIS that's set up at each one of the ports that are out there, so I know
What the winds are.
No, we'll go back to the
You're
old weather.
sneaking.
We need
You're
a weather
sneaking to our
sock.
next
I
segment.
need
I want a
weather
sock.
I want a sock.
Hey, I would like. Most aircraft can have a speed and direction and speed indicator, right? I mean, that's something. I think that's something that should
It
be
has that.
there.
The little marker when you're flying around.
What century are we in?
Yeah,
The 30th century, right?
The ships that don't have that in the game.
they all have that.
They don't have a wind
Well, it
direction
gives you-
indicator.
Really don't.
No,
gives
not a
you
wind
speed,
direction
but it-
indicator, but it gives you what direction your nose is going in. You could
It
tell
gives
what
you a
you're.
momentum marker, which
It
way
doesn't
you're-
tell you
the-
what the
the-
air's
the-
doing around you.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
most aircraft you don't have that in.
Oh, I think with GPS it does.
Well, yeah, with GPS, but anyhow.
You know, that ancient 20th century invention.
Yeah, that ancient thing that we don't have, which
What-
we're going to
what-
get to.
Yeah.
We
We're going to
forgot
get to it
about.
later, but
We're
my
going
God.
to get to that.
There
but
is
it
one
definitely-
gameplay aspect of this, though, I wanted to point out, and it's that because of these factors of visibility and affecting your ability to maneuver. Remember when they first came out with the vehicles, people were like, "Well, why would I drive a vehicle? I'll just fly there." Well, there's your reason. It may be some places may be too damn dangerous to fly, and you'll have
If we
to.
had
go by
modern
ground.
avionics.
Oh yeah. Well, we found that out the hard way. Oh, well, Jay almost found it out the hard way on Calliope when he decided, oh, it's only 250 yards to that bunker. I'll go ahead and start walking. And so I asked him, you sure you don't want me to pull out that Ursa rover? Nah, no problem. I'll just go ahead and start walking. About halfway across, he's like, maybe you better pull out that Ursa rover.
I don't know that I'm going to be able to get back.
Because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get back. So yeah, so that, and I agree with Jolly. Even though right now I think the winds are too high because they're in the testing phase and they're just getting feedback, et cetera, and I think they're going to dial those back down. And I think they're also going to change the frequency in which storms and other things roll through environments as we make it more realistic. But I think this really, really does add a level of immersion that you don't necessarily get in other places. Yeah, some games that I've played, you hear the winds, you hear the rains, you hear this stuff, but it doesn't necessarily always impact you. You know, there's some games you play that your armor doesn't work as well when it's wet. You don't get as good protection, or it's not as, your sword's not as sharp or something like that. We've all been in those cases. But the fact that I've got to really think about where I'm going and what I need and how am I going to survive in that environment, I believe is a real plus.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
So, anybody not gotten to talk about this that wants to talk about it, speak up now.
Josh?
Josh.
Josh?